You can replace the person, but not the impact they had on your soul. Some people replaced you like it was nothing, quick, cold, almost like a disappearing act. One minute you were everything, their comfort, their home, their fire, and the next they acted like they didn't even remember the warmth. But here's what they'll never tell you. They didn't replace you because they were healed. They replaced you because they couldn't handle what you left behind. And what you left behind was real. It had weight, it had energy, it had soul. And no matter how fast they ran, no matter who they grabbed next, they'll never outrun the echo of your presence. Hey folks, imagine this. You light a candle in a dark room. It's warm, it's glowing, it's peaceful. Then suddenly someone walks in and blows it out and rushes to switch on a cheap neon bulb to avoid sitting in the dark. The bulb is bright, yeah, but it's cold, and now they miss the flame. That's what they did to you. You were the flame. You were the thing that brought warmth, not just light. But instead of tending to it, they blew it out and called it closure. And now? Now they're trying to make the artificial feel like home. Spoiler alert, it never will. People don't always leave because they're over you. They leave because the silence you left behind is too loud, because your absence held up a mirror to who they really are, and it shook them. So what do? They grab the nearest replacement and call it healing. But healing doesn't move that fast. Healing doesn't wear a mask and force a smile. My friends, let me break something for you. The lie that you were replaceable. That's the trick they want you to believe so you doubt your worth. But hear me, you weren't replaced. You were escaped from, because facing you meant facing their own guilt, their own patterns, their own failure to value something rare. And some people would rather fake happy than sit in that discomfort. Let's have a little fun for a second. Ever seen someone try to fill a pothole with glitter? Looks nice for 5 minutes, until the rain comes. That's what their rebound looks like. A shiny distraction that washes away the moment life gets real again. Meanwhile, your silence? That's been growing roots. That's been building something unshakable underneath. You didn't lose anything, my friend. You were never the one truly missing out. They just replaced a treasure with a toy, and now they're stuck pretending the game feels the same. But deep down, they know. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to post or chase or react. Just keep doing what you're doing, growing, building, rising. And if you're still questioning your value because of how quickly someone moved on, let me say this loud. Fast doesn't mean free. It means fear. The faster they replaced you, the more it proves they weren't ready for what you brought to the table. You weren't just a partner. You were the lesson they didn't study for. So today, I want you to shake off that doubt. Stand tall in your silence. Look in the mirror and remember, you're not forgettable. You're unforgettable. You're not replaceable. You're the reason they're still pretending they're fine. Comment this below right now. I am not replaceable. Say it with your chest. Say it for the version of you that gave everything. Say it for the version of you that's building back stronger. Press that like button, hit subscribe, and stay with me, because what's coming next, they won't see it coming. Number 1. They replaced the person, but not the presence. You can lie to the world about who you're with now, but your soul still remembers who made it feel alive. You see, the problem isn't that they moved on, it's that they tried to move on without ever really letting you go. And what they don't understand, what they'll never say out loud, is that you can replace the person, but you can't replace the presence. You can't replace what someone meant to your nervous system, to your late-night thoughts, to the way you used to breathe a little easier when you heard their voice. You weren't just in their life, you were in their being. And that kind of imprint, that doesn't vanish with a click of unfollow or a new smile in a filtered photo. Imagine this with me, folks. Picture someone walking into a sacred temple, quiet, ancient, full of stillness, and then slapping a cheap poster on the wall to make it feel updated. That's what they did when they replaced you quickly. They didn't heal the history, they just painted over it. But guess what? You can cover the walls, you can change the furniture, but the energy of what once lived there, it lingers. Your energy lingers. That's what they feel in the silence. That's what keeps poking at them when the new connection doesn't quite hit the same. And maybe you've asked yourself this. Why did they move on so fast? Did I not matter? Was I that easy to erase? It's a brutal question, one that makes your chest tighten and your mind spiral. But the truth is, they didn't move on because they didn't care. They moved on because they couldn't stand the stillness your absence left behind. Some people run not because they're ready, but because standing still would force them to face themselves. And your presence. It was a mirror, a truth teller, a quiet storm that brought out both the best in them and the parts they were too afraid to fix. So what did they do? They hit the panic button, they downloaded the apps, they posted the new story, they found a replacement. But let me break the illusion. Replacing the person is easy. Replacing the feeling, that's where they lose every time. Because anyone can step into your role, but not everyone can recreate your presence. Not everyone can make them feel safe while still challenging their patterns. Not everyone can make silence feel peaceful instead of awkward, and not everyone can sit across from them and know their soul was lying, even when their mouth was smiling. You weren't just someone. You were the one who made them question their patterns. You were the calm that exposed their chaos. And now they're scrambling to feel that same emotional safety, but they can't find it. Because the version of themselves that existed when you were around doesn't show up for anyone else. That's the real reason they're unsettled. Not because you're gone, but because who they were with you. That version of them felt alive, seen, understood. And without you, that part of them is gone too. But why does this sting so much? Why does it feel like their fast replacement means you were worthless? Because society feeds you that lie, that if they find someone new quickly, it means they've upgraded. But let's be honest, fast food doesn't taste like a home-cooked meal. You don't replace a soul connection with convenience and expect it to nourish you the same way. You don't forget someone who brought depth just because someone else brings distraction. And here's what they'll never admit, that your presence changed them, that after you, they'll search for the same emotional resonance and never quite find it again. Sure, the new one may look good in pictures, may say all the right things, but your presence wasn't about appearance or performance. It was about energy, frequency, alignment, and you don't fake that. You either feel it or you don't. Now they walk through life with a smile that doesn't reach their eyes. They laugh, but it doesn't echo the same. They hold hands with someone who doesn't understand them the way you did, and they tell themselves they've moved on, but deep down, their soul still flinches at the sound of your name. Because presence, my friends, can't be replaced. It haunts. It lingers. It whispers in their quiet moments. It shows up when the world goes still and the distractions fade. And you don't need to do a thing. Your silence is enough. Your peace is loud. Your absence is echoing in places they try to ignore. That's power. Not the kind you show, the kind you become, the kind that doesn't chase, doesn't fight, doesn't post revenge glow-ups to prove a point. The kind that walks forward with quiet discipline and lets the universe handle the rest. But I know, it's hard. You still miss them, you still wonder, you still feel the urge to check if they've noticed your absence. That's human, that's normal, but don't let those moments make you forget what you actually are. You're not someone they replaced, you're someone they couldn't keep. Big difference. And one day, maybe not now, maybe not soon, But one day, they'll sit with someone new, feel the silence between words and think, this doesn't feel like them. And that realization, that quiet ache, that's your presence doing what no text or call ever could. So right now, in this moment, I want you to remember who you are, not what they made you feel, not what their actions tried to suggest, but who you really are underneath it all, a presence that cannot be replaced. Not by someone new, not by a forced smile, not by a rebound trying to mimic a connection it will never understand. Write this in the comments right now. You can't replace presence. Let that be your reminder. Let that be your standard. Say it for yourself. Say it for the version of you who stayed loyal while they wavered. Say it for the version who is now rising without needing applause. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that silence is not your weakness. It's your proof. And stay with me, my friends, because what's coming next? Oh, they're going to feel that too. Number 2, they replaced the connection, but not the standard. You can replace the person. You can even pretend to forget them. But the standard they set, that becomes the curse every new connection must compete with. They thought they were starting fresh, clean slate, new chapter, a replacement that would erase the memories, the echoes, the weight of what you once meant. But here's the part that's quietly destroying them from the inside out. You didn't just love them, you raised the bar. You weren't a fling, you weren't a phase, you were the standard. And that is the one thing they'll never escape. See, it's easy to replace the label of a relationship. It's easy to change the display name in the phone, swap out the contact photo, take a few cute pictures, and let the world believe they're doing better. But what they're not posting is the constant comparison in their mind, the subtle ache, the quiet dissatisfaction they can't name, but you can, because you felt it too. That unspoken knowing when someone gave you less than you gave them. That's what they're feeling now. Only they're the one on the receiving end. You set a standard not just in love, but in effort, in presence, in emotional safety. You showed up, not just physically. You paid attention. You listened to what they said and what they didn't. You remembered the little things. You noticed their mood shifts. You called out their avoidance, not to attack, but to help them grow. You gave them space when they needed it, and connection when they didn't know how to ask for it. Now imagine them trying to find that in someone who's just here for the surface-level joyride, someone who doesn't read them like a map, someone who doesn't challenge their chaos or hold them accountable to the person they could be. That's what they're sitting with now. A new connection that might look good from the outside but feels flat, shallow, incomplete. And that's the thing about standards. Once you've felt what real looks like, you can't unfeel it. It becomes the blueprint, the inner checklist. Even if they don't want to admit it out loud, they start measuring everything else against the blueprint you left behind. And guess what? Most can't match it. Not because they're bad people, but because they weren't built to handle the depth you brought. And here's what makes it worse for them. You never had to try too hard to set that standard. It was just who you were, that consistency, that care, that grounded energy. You weren't perfect, but you were present. You were real in a world full of pretenders. You had the courage to have the hard conversations. You were willing to grow with them, not just smile with them when things were easy. That's rare. That's gold. And they threw it away thinking they'd find it again. But now they're learning the hard way. They're learning that pretty doesn't equal peaceful, that attention doesn't equal affection, that someone texting them good morning doesn't mean they're emotionally safe. And slowly, that truth starts to sink in. Every time they have to explain their emotional patterns to someone new, every time they miss being understood without words, every time a new person gets close but doesn't get them, That's when they remember you, not because you're still calling, not because you're watching their stories, but because your absence makes more sense than their current presence. That's the silent punishment. That's the invisible karma. Not because you wished it on them, but because they chose cheap over real, fast over meaningful, comfortable over conscious. And you've probably sat with the pain of being replaced like you were forgettable. You've probably asked yourself, was I not enough? Was it all fake? But no, it wasn't fake. It was just too real for someone still playing pretend with their own emotional wounds. They didn't replace you because you weren't valuable. They replaced you because they weren't ready to meet that value with their own. That's what no one talks about, that sometimes people run from those who make them feel seen, not because they don't like it, but because they're terrified of what that reflection reveals. You showed them who they could be. And instead of rising to meet that, they went looking for someone who'd let them stay the same. But here's where the shift happens, my friend. The part where you realize your power. You don't lower the standard just because they couldn't live up to it. You don't start questioning your depth just because someone else wanted shallow. You keep building. You keep holding that bar. Not just for them, but for you. Because you've tasted what your energy feels like at its full force, and that's not something you give away to just anyone. Let the new person try. Let them smile for the photos. Let them play their part. It's easy to look good in the honeymoon phase, but the real test is when things get heavy, when life hits, when silence creeps in and the energy starts to shift. That's when they'll feel the gap, the missing layer of depth, the emotional safety net you once held under their chaos. And when they realize it's not there, the comparison begins, quiet, relentless, crushing, because what they had with you wasn't just a relationship, it was a mirror, it was an emotional sanctuary, it was a reminder of what they're capable of, if they'd only had the courage to face themselves instead of replacing you. And now, that opportunity is gone. That door is closed, not with hate, but with healing. So the next time you wonder if you were forgettable, remember this: standards don't fade, they echo, and yours is echoing in the quiet corners of their mind every time the new person falls short. You became the reference point, the measuring stick, the one they might not speak of, but will always remember when they realize happy doesn't feel the same without depth. Write this in the comments right now. I set the standard. Say it to reclaim your power. Say it for the part of you that once settled for less. Say it for the person you're becoming now, the one who doesn't beg to be chosen, but chooses who gets to witness them. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that what you bring to the table is not for those afraid of hunger. It's for those who are ready to grow. And stay with me, because next we're diving into something even deeper. Because the truth is, they replaced the conversations, but not the reflection. And the mirror you held up, it's still chasing them. Let's talk about it. Number 3. They replaced the conversations, but not the reflection. You can delete the chat, block the number, and mute the memories, but the mirror they once held up to you still shows your truth when no one else is watching. They replaced the late-night talks, the deep, vulnerable exchanges, the weird jokes, the quiet comfort of "you still there" at 2 a.m. They swapped that out for new chats, fresh emojis, and temporary dopamine. But let me tell you something they'll never admit out loud. They still hear your voice when they're trying to explain themselves to someone new. Because you weren't just conversation, you were a reflection. They thought replacing you would make the noise stop, that they'd finally get a clean, emotional slate. No more being challenged, no more feeling exposed, just light, casual, fun. But what they're realizing now is fun doesn't fix what's broken inside. Fun doesn't challenge their patterns. Fun doesn't ask the hard questions when the energy feels off. You did. You were the voice that asked, "Are you okay?" when their mask slipped. You were the one who caught the hesitation in their tone when they said they were fine. You were the one who could feel when their soul was exhausted, even when their smile was wide. And now they're talking to someone who can't read between the lines, who doesn't know what their silence means, who doesn't ask the questions that matter. It's all surface level now, safe, controlled, and slowly, it's suffocating them. Because what they're realizing is this: you weren't just someone they talked to, you were someone who made them listen to themselves. You were the mirror they tried to avoid, but couldn't stop coming back to. And here's where the discomfort creeps in. Every time the new person doesn't get them, they remember you did. Every time they try to have those deeper conversations and it feels forced, they remember how effortless it used to be with you. And that contrast? It becomes torture. But you've probably wondered too. You've probably stared at your own silence, asking yourself, did they ever even value what we shared? You remember the long calls, the confessions, the laughter, the pain. You remember how raw it got, how real, and now it's like it never existed, like it meant nothing, like you were just filling time until someone more convenient came along. That thought alone is enough to gut a person. But my friend, don't let their performance trick you. Don't let the highlight reel convince you that your connection was disposable, because people can replace a voice, but they can't replace a resonance. They can start new conversations, but they can't recreate the feeling of being understood. You made them feel seen in a way that was both terrifying and healing. And now, they've downgraded to easy, and it's already starting to itch. They thought they wanted peace, but what they really wanted was comfort without accountability. And you weren't a source of chaos. You were a source of clarity. You brought uncomfortable truths into the light. You asked them why they react the way they do, why they run when things get close, why they need constant validation to feel worthy. That's what they didn't want to face. So instead of leaning in, they logged off. Let me give you a metaphor, folks. Think of it like this. You were the clean mirror in the bathroom, the one that shows every detail, every flaw, every wrinkle, every smudge on their soul. And instead of cleaning themselves up, they smashed the mirror and bought a foggy one that flatters, one that doesn't show too much. But every morning, deep down, they know it's lying to them. And every night, when they're alone with themselves again, the old mirror still haunts them. Because here's the truth, most people are too scared to admit. They don't miss the person. They miss the version of themselves they were becoming around that person. They miss the way you brought out their introspective side, their vulnerable side, the part of them that was growing, even if it was uncomfortable. And now that you're gone, that version of them is fading too. So what do? They keep the new person close. They laugh, they text, they avoid the quiet. Because the quiet brings your reflection back, the one that doesn't need words, the one that says, "You're not being real." The one that whispers, "You ran." And they did. They ran from the mirror. But it's chasing them. And you don't need to say a word. You don't need to remind them of what you had, because the memory does that for you. The echo of who you were in their life gets louder every time they try to recreate depth with someone who only knows the surface. You don't have to prove you mattered. Their dissatisfaction is doing it for you. You're the reflection they can't delete, the mirror they broke but still feel every time the truth catches up with them. They thought silence meant freedom, but silence is the freedom. They just weren't ready to sit with it. You were. And now you're building in that silence, grounded, clear, evolving. And that's where you rise. You rise in the space where they once tried to keep you small. You rise without bitterness, without the need for revenge, because you're no longer focused on being heard by them. You're focused on listening to yourself. And that shift, that's the beginning of becoming untouchable. But I know it's not easy. I know you miss the conversations too, the connection, the feeling of being needed. But just because it ended doesn't mean it wasn't real. Just because they moved on doesn't mean they're not haunted by what they lost. And just because they're laughing with someone new doesn't mean your absence isn't the loudest thing in the room when the laughter dies down. So write this in the comments right now. You can't replace reflection. Say it for the version of you that was silenced. Say it for the truth they couldn't face. Say it for the person you are now, the one who's not afraid to look in the mirror and see clearly. Show them, show yourself, show the world around you that the person they lost wasn't just a voice in their life. You were the clarity in their chaos, and now that you're gone, that chaos has nothing left to hide behind. Stay with me, because next we're going to talk about what they tried to recreate but failed, the comfort you gave, and the accountability they never saw coming. It's time to expose the lie they tell themselves, that comfort without growth is still love. Let's go deeper. Number 4, they replaced the comfort, but not the accountability. They miss the peace you gave, but not the mirror that came with it, so they chose comfort without growth and called it healing. They didn't just walk away from a person, they walked away from their own reflection, from the version of themselves that only came alive in your presence. Because while they might say they miss your kindness, your warmth, your calm, the truth is, what they really miss, what they don't have the words to say, is how you made them face their own potential. And that, my friend, is something no new relationship can offer them, because they can replace comfort, but they can't replace accountability. You weren't just someone who held them, you were someone who held them accountable. You saw through their excuses. You loved them, yes, but not blindly. You weren't just there to stroke their ego or make them feel safe in their own dysfunction. You were there to help them grow out of it, and that scared them. Imagine a warm cabin in the middle of winter. You light the fire, you wrap them in a blanket, you make them feel safe. But then, when the fire burns too low, when the walls creak from the storm, you look at them and say, "You have to get up now. We need to keep building. This shelter won't last on its own." That's what your love was. It was safety and structure, comfort and challenge. You didn't just give them peace, you gave them a reason to evolve. But growth is hard, and let's be honest, some people don't want to grow. They want to be adored while staying exactly the same. They want love that doesn't question them, support that doesn't correct them, approval without truth. And when you didn't give them that blind approval, when you called out the patterns, when you said, "This behavior hurts me," when you refused to shrink just to make the relationship feel easier, they labeled it as too much. They mistook your boundaries for conflict, your standards for control. And instead of rising to meet the love, they replaced it with something easier, something softer, something silent. But here's what they're realizing now. Easy doesn't mean right. Silence doesn't mean peace. And comfort without growth eventually becomes stagnation. That new connection might feel cozy right now, but it doesn't challenge them. It doesn't stretch them. It doesn't ask them to be more. It just lets them be less. And at first, that feels like freedom. But over time, that freedom turns to restlessness. Because here's the cruel twist. Once someone has been stretched, once someone has been seen at a higher level, it becomes impossible to feel satisfied in relationships that let them hide. You expanded them. Even if they weren't ready for it, you made them look in the mirror. You asked them not just who they were, but who they were becoming. And now, Now they've gone backwards, and even they can feel it, but they'll never say it out loud. No, they'll call their new relationship peaceful. They'll say it's drama-free. They'll post pictures with captions like, "finally happy," but what they really mean is, "finally unchallenged." What they really mean is, "finally allowed to stay small." And you're sitting there wondering why they replaced you so quickly. You're asking yourself if you were too intense, too emotional, too demanding. But let me tell you something, you weren't too much. You were just more than they were ready to handle. And instead of leveling up, they settled down. Not in a good way, not in a healthy love way, in a complacent way. They're with someone who doesn't know their triggers, who doesn't challenge their coping mechanisms, who doesn't notice when they shut down emotionally or default to old habits. And for a while, that feels like relief. But soon, that relief turns to boredom. That safety becomes numbness. Because without reflection, without growth, without someone to say, "I see more in you than this," they go back to being someone they once hated being. Someone you helped them escape from. That's what they're really mourning now, not just the loss of you, but the loss of themselves, the version of them that existed when you loved them right, the version that felt alive because you refused to let them live on autopilot. You challenged the lies they told themselves. You asked them to do better, be better, rise. And now, they're being applauded just for staying the same. But here's what makes this beautiful. You never stopped growing. You didn't need a relationship to feel seen. You didn't need someone to validate your standards. You kept evolving, even in the silence, even through the pain. While they replaced real with easy, you replaced heartbreak with self-respect. You replaced loneliness with discipline, and you, my friend, are becoming someone they'll one day wish they could meet again, but won't recognize when they do. Because that version of you, the one who challenged, loved, and held them up, is not someone who settles. It's someone who selects, carefully, intentionally, powerfully. And I know it still hurts. The nights are still quiet. You still catch yourself missing the warmth, the laughter, the routine. But just because something felt good doesn't mean it was helping you grow. And you were built to grow, built to stretch, built to challenge and be challenged. You were never meant to shrink just to be loved more easily. So no, they didn't replace what mattered. They replaced what made them uncomfortable. But here's the thing, they'll come to realize that growth is uncomfortable because it's real. That challenge is love in disguise. That anyone can make you feel good for a moment, but it takes something rare to make you want to become a better version of yourself. And that's what you were, rare, valuable, uncomfortable for all the right reasons. You didn't exist to make them feel good all the time. You existed to wake them up. Write this in the comments right now. Comfort doesn't replace growth. Let it be your truth, your reminder, your war cry. Say it for the version of you that thought silence meant safety. Say it for the version of you that kept showing up even when it got hard. Say it for the person you're becoming now, the one who's not afraid of depth, of truth, of growth. Show them. Show yourself, show the world around you that your love never came without accountability and your absence never comes without consequence. And stay with me, because next we're talking about something deeper, something they can't pretend isn't real, the soul connection, the part of you that didn't just comfort but changed the room when you walked in. Let's go. Number 5, they replaced the role but not the soul. You can fill a position, but you can't replace a presence. Souls don't come with duplicates. They thought all they needed was someone new, someone to smile next to in photos, someone to sit across from at dinner, someone to fill the empty space you once held. They thought replacing the role you played would heal the void you left behind. But here's what they're starting to realize in the quiet moments, in the slow hours when the performance stops. You didn't just fill a role. You brought a soul. And that's irreplaceable. Let's break this illusion. They didn't just lose a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a partner. They lost the soul behind the connection, the one who felt them when they didn't say a word, the one who could hear the emotion behind the silence, the one who could read their energy before they even entered the room. You weren't just part of their day. You were part of their frequency, part of their nervous system, and you can't just replace that with a new name and a few butterflies. Imagine going to your favorite coffee shop every morning. The barista knows your name, your order, your story. There's a comfort in that ritual, a sense of belonging. Then one day, they're gone, replaced by someone new. The coffee might taste the same, but the feeling, the connection, gone. That's what they're waking up to now. That new person in their life might be playing your role, but they don't have your spirit. They don't carry your energy. And slowly, they're realizing that what they really miss can't be mimicked, because you weren't a job title, you weren't a convenience, you were a soul-deep force that made them feel something they didn't know they needed until it was gone. That kind of connection doesn't come around twice. It doesn't show up just because you're lonely. It shows up when you're aligned. When two people's energies recognize each other before their minds even understand it. And now they're with someone new, someone who checks the boxes, who plays the part, who's there when they reach out. But there's a problem. It doesn't feel the same. It doesn't move them the way you did. It's comfortable maybe, but it's not electric. It's not alive, and that absence, it grows. Because here's what they're discovering, whether they admit it or not, anyone can occupy the position. Not everyone can carry the weight that comes with your presence, that emotional gravity, that soul-level connection that said, I see all of you, and I'm still here. Most people want love that's soft and safe, but when they met you, they got love that was sacred, and now they're trying to find that in someone who's reading from a script you wrote. Let's be real. Roles are easy to replace. There are thousands of people ready to play boyfriend or girlfriend, ready to go on dates, post cute stories, and say all the right things. But soul is rare. Soul doesn't perform. It perceives. It doesn't try. It just is. That's what you were, and that's what they didn't understand until it was too late. They thought the feelings came from the routine, the messages, the calls, the time spent together. But now they're doing all of that with someone new, and it feels off. Because it wasn't the habits that made the love. It was your spirit behind them. Your energy turned routine into ritual, presence into peace, and love into something holy. But they weren't ready for holy, they weren't ready for real, so they went back to something simpler, shallower, easier to manage, and now they're faking depth in a relationship that only exists on the surface. Laughing louder to cover the emptiness. Talking more to fill the silence you once understood without words. And the more they try to force the spark, the more they remember that with you. They didn't have to try. You know what haunts people most after a deep connection ends? It's not the loss of the person, it's the loss of the feeling they gave you about yourself. The way your soul danced when they walked in the room, the way time slowed down, the way conversations felt like healing instead of talking. And once you've experienced that, everything else feels like a knockoff. And you were the original. The rare, the one who didn't just love, they activated. You didn't just show up, you shifted the whole room. And that leaves a void, a silence that a new voice can't fill, a shadow they try not to see. Because when a soul like yours exits, even the air feels different. But you've probably questioned it too. If I was so valuable, why was I so easy to replace? That's the trap, the illusion, the lie. What you must understand is this: people don't replace the soul, they replace the reminder of what they couldn't handle. Your presence held them to a higher standard. Your soul activated theirs, and they weren't ready for that level of exposure, so they traded elevation for escape. And now, while you rebuild in silence, they pretend they've found peace. But peace without alignment is just a pause before the next collapse. And that collapse, it's coming. Not because you wished it, but because they settled for a version of love that doesn't require them to grow. Meanwhile, your soul, it's not looking to be filled, it's becoming full on its own. That's the difference. You're not searching for a replacement, you're becoming the source. And in time, that difference will be so loud, they'll hear it in your silence. They'll feel it in your distance, and they'll regret not recognizing what stood in front of them while it still had open arms. Write this in the comments right now. You can't replace soul. Say it for the version of you that brought depth. Say it for the version they ran from. Say it for the version of you now, the one who's no longer offering soul access to people who only wanted your surface. Show them, show yourself, show the world around you that your energy is not something people stumble upon twice. You don't chase, you shift. And the new version of you, the one built from silence, from self-trust, from spiritual clarity, that version doesn't play roles. Stay with me, because next we're going even deeper, because while they replaced the routine, they never understood it was the ritual that changed everything. Let's expose what they never valued until they felt the absence of your alignment. Number 6, they replaced the routine, but not the ritual. You can mimic the motions, but you can't recreate the meaning. Ritual is sacred, and once lost, it echoes forever. They thought they could rebuild what you had by copying the pattern. Same good morning texts, same shared songs, same nights out, same hand-holding. But what they didn't realize is, you weren't a routine. You were a ritual, a sacred energy, a living presence. Not something they did, but something they felt. And the second they walked away and tried to plug someone else into that sacred rhythm, the entire melody fell flat. Because routine is easy. Anyone can do routine. Wake up, text, eat together, laugh, scroll, sleep. It's mechanical, it's replaceable, it's surface. But ritual is different. Ritual holds intention. It's not what you did, it was how you meant it. You didn't just ask how their day was. You asked because you cared. You didn't just sit beside them. You grounded them. Your energy didn't just show up. It arrived with meaning, with healing, with presence. They lost that, and they feel it. They might not know how to name it, but they feel it. That ache, that hollowness, that quiet, constant sense that something is missing, even when someone is right in front of them. That's the ritual you once brought. The emotional gravity, the invisible thread of depth that doesn't come from what you do, but from who you are when you do it. See, when you're a ritual in someone's life, your presence creates a frequency. It shifts the space. It turns regular moments into sacred ones. The way you made coffee together in the morning wasn't just caffeine. It was connection. The way you held them after a long day wasn't just comfort. It was spiritual anchoring. The way you looked into their eyes wasn't just attention. It was remembrance. They forgot who they were, and you reminded them. And now they've got someone else sitting across from them doing the same things. But it's just routine. There's no soul in it, just repetition, like reading a prayer out loud with no faith behind it, like lighting a candle but never closing your eyes. It's hollow, it's dry, it's a performance with no emotional weight behind the lines. And the longer it goes on, the more obvious it becomes. They lost the ritual, and now they're stuck with the routine. But let's be real, you've questioned yourself, haven't you? You've scrolled through their stories and seen the familiar patterns, the laughs, the selfies, the celebrations, and it hits you like a cold wind, doesn't it? You think, are they just reliving everything we had with someone else? And the pain of that, it cuts deep. But here's the truth that cuts deeper and heals harder. They didn't relive it, they replayed it, like a broken record, but it doesn't sound the same, it doesn't feel the same, because rituals aren't about actions, they're about alignment, and they can imitate every scene, but they'll never replicate the spirit. You were the difference, not the date night, not the good morning texts. You. They thought routine was enough, but routine without soul is like a heartbeat without a pulse. It's movement without life, and sooner or later they'll feel it. They already are. The silence between laughs, the awkward pauses where there used to be deep connection, the sense that something is always slightly off. That's you, not your presence, but the absence of your ritual. Let me take you even deeper. When someone leaves a sacred space, they don't just leave behind objects, they leave behind energy. You became part of their ritual rhythm. You were the grounding force they started their days with, the mental reset they came home to, the peace they didn't know how to find in themselves. And now that you're gone, they try to recreate it. But the new rhythm keeps skipping. It's like trying to hum a song you don't remember the words to. Familiar, but off-key. Because when you're aligned with someone's soul, it doesn't matter how small the moment is. You can be brushing teeth together, driving in silence, folding laundry, and it feels cosmic. It feels like two souls are colliding in the quietest, most mundane way possible. That's what they lost. Not the big dates, not the Instagram-worthy moments, but the invisible magic that was always running in the background of your presence. And now that you've pulled away, not with anger, but with peace, they're waking up inside a life that looks full, but feels empty. And every morning they go through the motions with someone else. That feeling grows, like trying to light a fire with damp wood. Everything's there, but it won't catch. That's the cost of losing a ritual. It's not explosive, it's quiet. It decays in silence. It starts with, why doesn't this feel as deep? And turns into, why don't I feel like myself anymore? Because when you were with them, they didn't just feel loved, they felt real. And without that kind of love, people drift back into versions of themselves they thought they'd outgrown. That's the grief they never post. That's the ache they never admit. But you don't have to chase. You know what you brought. You know your love wasn't basic. You know your connection wasn't surface level. You know you were a ritual disguised as routine. And now that you're gone, they're stuck with a life that follows the same script, but none of the soul. You're not replaceable, not because you were perfect, but because you were present, because you didn't just check the boxes, you infused them with energy. You were the one who made Tuesday nights feel like Sunday morning peace. You were the one who turned breathing into bonding. You were the reason their heart didn't race. It rested. And now that peace is gone, and the new connection is just motion with no meaning, because rituals live on, even when the person is gone. And you, my friend, will live in that silence longer than any post, any kiss, any new name ever could. So here's how we end this. Write this in the comments right now. I was the ritual. Say it for the version of you that made ordinary moments extraordinary. Say it for the version that gave their all and got replaced by routine. Say it for the version of you now, the one who knows their worth can't be mimicked or remade. Let them have the routine. You carry the ritual. You carry the frequency. You don't need to be remembered. You're still felt. And your next chapter, it won't just be real, it'll be sacred. Let's go.